Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove and I'm joined by the CFO of the Total Soccer Show. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. That should be more of an honor, except I know what you mean with that title. I'm still pretty honored by it, though.
What does CFO stand for?
I'm going to assume it means Chief Foam Officer.
Chief Foam Officer.
Yeah.
So yeah, I came in earlier than advertised to the office today, and I think Taylor was attempting to surprise me.
I was.
With an upgrade to our acoustic foam in the Total Soccer Show studio/office.
Tower.
The Total Soccer
The whole
Show
tower has been covered in acoustic foam.
So we do have one beautiful new wall of acoustic foam.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. It's a little bit more uniform than what we had previously.
So maybe people will notice even less echo on today's Total Soccer Show.
Hopefully it's not like, I can hear it from one side and not the other. Because only one side of the room is completely covered. The other side, still sparsely.
Can we ever so slightly tease why you were doing that?
Sure, because it turns out that if you have a uniform background, it helps with video
There
content.
you go. That's maybe we'll say no more, nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
There we go.
Today's show is not USA versus Brazil.
We're filming a remake of Chips.
There we go. It's not a USA v Brazil.
That movie happened and it was terrible.
Preview. USA v Brazil preview is coming later this week. It's a listener question special. And for some reason, we got loads of questions about the UEFA Nations League.
Yeah.
Maybe because at the end of last week's show, I said, please send us your questions about the UEFA Nations League. And the following day, I put out a tweet saying, please send us your questions about the UEFA Nations League.
I'm going to say it was the latter solicitation that probably did it.
But thank you to everybody who did send UEFA Nations League questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have other stuff to talk about,
I suppose,
as well. Okay, are you ready, Taylor?
Sure.
For the first question. First question comes from Trevor Tobert. Trevor wants to know, I'm laughing because I forgot how we phrased this. What the Cooligans is the UEFA Nations League?
Yeah.
Is it actually important?
Sure.
So
first of all, excellent censorship.
Self-censorship and promotion. I think the Cooligans have done well to get themselves promoted in that way, right?
Yeah, I think so.
You and I have historically disagreed on whether the UEFA Nations League is actually important. I feel like we came to a sort of, what's the word, detente, maybe, last night or earlier today. So should we get that out of the way first before we get into the details of what this thing, which, by the way, kicks off on Thursday, what the UEFA Nations League actually is?
Yeah. I mean, to clarify, it's not as though I was ever, morally opposed to the UEFA Nations League or anything. It's just that I think you were
You weren't, handcuffing yourself to a railing to stop it happening.
Not so much, no. Because I'm not sure that would have done anything. I would have just ended up handcuffed to a railing.
You would. They just played around you.
Yeah, this isn't Parks and Rec. This doesn't work out in the end. So I think it was just more so that you were much more enthusiastic about it than I was. For me, it was just they're just creating another, sort of tournament thing. Whatever.
I think it's probably best to phrase it as, and this isn't just me deliberately coming to a consensus, I was overly enthusiastic and you were underly enthusiastic. And I think now that the time has actually come, we're probably about in the middle, right? Which is probably where we should be.
Sure.
So it's not as important as, say, the World Cup.
No.
But it's way more important than, say, a friendly.
Correct.
And that's what the UEFA Nations League is.
That is where I think that's what I failed to grasp, and that's where I am now, is recognizing that because it's an official competition, the things that happen in friendlies will be far less likely to happen in this competition.
Yeah.
And that, I think we did have this conversation. I know we got to get into the specifics of what I'm talking about.
We've got as long as we need.
There we go. But I want to say, because for me it just felt like, you're just rebranding friendlies as a sort of tournament to create maybe more interest or maybe make it more competitive. I hadn't thought about what goes along with that is that now you don't have subs 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
And you don't have, meaningless friendlies as you talked about, but you also have the opportunity to cap players, so it becomes that much more important.
Declan Rice was very skittish about his Ireland call-up because he's got to now choose between England and Ireland.
But really it goes back to the substitutions thing for me, because it becomes difficult if we're reviewing a U.S. friendly. Obviously this doesn't pertain to the U.S. yet, but if we're reviewing an England friendly, for example, it kind of becomes meaningless in the 60th minute and on because you've made all these changes.
Danny Drinkwater's in the 78th minute.
Yeah, and you don't have 4, 5, and 6 extra substitutions or 2 or 3 extra substitutions to play with, and so it kind of makes that friendly less meaningful as the game progresses, basically. Whereas now you don't have that. So it's more exciting.
All right, so you with me too. Now we'll back out.
Sure.
Now we seem to agree on the relative importance of the UEFA Nations League.
Sure.
Let's back out and explain what it is.
Okay.
So we've made clear it is an upgrade so there are no more friendlies because the problem was friendlies were becoming a thing that nobody really wanted to watch or care about or even get called up for. A lot of players would drop out of friendlies.
Yeah.
This is UEFA's attempt to replace those friendly games with a league structure where there are points on the line and it all feels more important. What they've done is they've taken all the UEFA nations and they've split them up into 4 tiers. They're calling it leagues: League A, League B, League C, League D, best teams in League A. And then within each league, they've set up groups of 3. So there are 4 groups of 3 in each league. So England is always my go-to example for obvious reasons. England are in a group with Spain and Croatia.
Oof.
Yeah, but they're all like that, right? 'Cause it's the top league. They will play both those teams home and away, and then the winner will finish top of the group. They will go to like a Final Four championship. The middle team will just stay where they are. The bottom team will get relegated for the next UEFA Nations League to League B.
Yeah.
There's Pro-Rel. We've got Pro-Rel in international soccer.
You do. And you've just got the grounds for tabloid newspapers that would not otherwise care about the UEFA Nations League to drum up interest by talking about how England can't even stay in the top flight.
I mean, that's a real risk, right? To either, think about this, either recent World Cup winner Spain, World Cup finalist Croatia, or proud inventor of the game.
I was wondering what you were going to go with there.
Well, there's a certain pride that England has about
World
itself.
Cup, 4th place finisher.
It's coming home and all that. If you get relegated from the top tier, that means something, right? So what we've done here is we've added drama and narrative and points, literally 3 points for a win, 1 for a draw, 0 for a loss, to what would have been friendlies. Now we have the UEFA Nations League. It has a narrative structure around it.
And I think that's the difference for me is I still have a hard time believing. This is one of the things we disagreed on at the time was like, I don't know if an England player is going to walk off the field after those games have been played and think like, oh, now we're relegated to the B division. This is terrible.
I think this is where we disagreed, right? I agree it is not as important as, say, a World Cup. You will get players drop out. Raheem Sterling dropped out of the England squad.
But more so, like what I'm realizing now, like, is that if you remove the like almost terminology from it of like, oh no, we've been relegated to the lower division, and you just see it as like after that first round of games, after the first tournament or whatever you want to go with, you get a more firm understanding of like where teams are and how teams are moving up or down. And I think just like removing some of like the pro-rel and the framework of it to make it into like an official competition. And if you get rid of that, in my mind, it becomes much more exciting because suddenly it is England going down and like, will they be able to get their way back up?
Yeah.
I don't know why.
It has drama. It has a story. It has a plot that you can follow as opposed to a weird friendly that exists in a vacuum and people have paid money to be there, but like not everybody's into it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And so I think I think for me, I just kept getting hung up on the ICC feeling of it all. That it was like, oh, they're creating this tournament. It doesn't really matter. Is England going to really care? Probably not. And suddenly, if you think about it just from more abstract terms of these are official games where substitutions
points
matter and caps matter and points are on the line, suddenly it's a thing that players can get up for and will probably want to get up for.
And then, so if you're in League A, if you finish top of the group, next summer, so the summer of 2019, we don't know where it'll be hosted yet, but there'll be a 4-nation tournament, like a semi-finals, a final, and even, this is a stretch, a third-place game.
Oh, boy.
For the winners of...
Just one more game not to care about.
League A, Group 1, 2, 3, and 4 to crown an eventual UEFA Nations League winner. So we'll have a champion. But here's my pitch to you. In many ways, this is more interesting to the teams lower down. Like if you're in League C or League B, like say Scotland, something like that, for you it's a chance to, literally get yourself promoted to a higher tier of international soccer. There's a lot of pride on the line for the more mid-sized nations.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the small to mid-sized nations.
Yeah.
I don't want to go too into the weeds on the particulars, but it also allows teams to stay like basically in contention for Euro spots far more easily and readily than the current or the past qualification system.
Do you trust me to have a quick go at summarizing that process?
More than I trust myself.
All right, so the League of Nations will exist September, October, November. That's how we'll play at the League of Nations. Then there'll be the Championship next summer. Then Euro 2020 qualification starts, which is a whole separate thing. So you can qualify the way they normally do. You have various groups. You try and qualify for the Euro 2020 tournament. Right. But there will be a second chance at qualifying for Euro 2020 for the teams that won their groups in the UEFA Nations League. So if you finish top of League D, Group 1, one of the lower tiers, that gives you a chance at going into the playoffs for Euro 2020. So you get a second shot at that.
Yep.
Yeah?
And was it Poland who intentionally didn't play friendlies so that they wouldn't lose points? So
for their World Cup group. Yeah.
And that's
that really worked out, right?
I have a feeling, exactly. I have a feeling like there is going to be some national team that maybe tries to exploit this loophole by being like, so if you finish top of your group, regardless of what level you're at, you still have a shot at qualification, right?
Yeah.
So then, like, would you be surprised to see Poland, like, field, or Denmark right now, they're fielding a bunch of, like, YouTube footballers and stuff because of the row they're having with their FA?
Yeah.
Like, what if Denmark just keep getting relegated down to D and then bring in all their top players and win? And then,
I mean, that would be a very long play.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that wouldn't even get them to Euro 2020. That would be a Euro 2024 play.
Hey, you never know. Long-term thinking, baby. Long-term thinking.
You're always looking for those loopholes.
It's about strategy.
So the one thing against... so we're basically answering Trevor's question here. The one thing that I think is against the UEFA Nations League is that it's kind of complicated. Like, there was a lot that we had to explain. There are so many different groups and stages, like literally A1, B2, there's a C3, there's all these different stages and groups. I think that makes it complicated.
Well, can I interject to say this?
Yeah, please do.
Literally anything is complicated the deeper you go into it. If you just see this as, oh, it's an official competition that makes friendlies more important because you're creating a tournament format. That's more or less what's happening. The more you go into it, if you want to say, bake an apple pie, you can do that. That's very easy. But the more you're going to put, what kind of dough? What kind of apple? Is there a specific apple?
But you do need to know the answer to all of that, right? Yeah. Otherwise, you don't have an apple pie.
Exactly. Yeah. So the more deeply you get involved in a thing,
metaphors.
Yeah. That's what we're all about here.
So this goes
clumsy
to
analogies.
Another UEFA Nations League question from Kaz Tidrick. Kaz, we saw on Twitter, coming out of hospital soon after a long stay there, so I hope that goes well. Kaz wants to know, what is the purpose of the pro-rel system in the UEFA Nations League? Why not have everyone eligible play in one league? Which is what we're just getting to, right? It would be a lot easier, at least to explain to people, if you just said, instead of friendlies, there's one big league for all the international teams and they play in it.
Yeah, because there's too many teams.
I think it's basically that, right?
That's what starts it, because if you then are like... If you put everybody in, how many member states are there?
40-something.
Yeah, so suddenly that becomes like a 7-year-long competition.
Maybe more, maybe 50-something.
Yeah, and so then if you break it into 2 tables, then you still have it in 2 tables or 4 tables, then it still is just as complex, and now it's still in this weird, like, who gets to be in the top one? Why do people automatically get assigned to that one? Whereas right now, because that is the way it is, but because you've got like more groups with smaller numbers of teams or fewer teams, you get more... upward, downward movement than you would with one big table where maybe 2 teams go down and 2 teams come up. With this one, 4 go down, 4 come up every single time?
Yep, exactly that. Yeah. And you get to, because there's only 3 teams in each group, you can get these fixtures played home and away every team. So each team plays 4 times. Yeah. You can get them played over the international dates in September, October, November.
Wait, did you say every team plays home?
Yeah.
Home 4 times?
Home and away. Oh, so a total of 4 games.
2 away. Gotcha.
Yeah, total of 4 games. It's over. September, October, November, it's over.
Yep.
Right? If you did it as a much bigger table, suddenly you've got to extend it. You end up with like South American World Cup qualifying, right? Which takes a couple of years.
Exactly, yeah. And I do think there's something to be said, and this ties in with our next question, that if you go that route, you're going to have to fit in far more games to accommodate that schedule, which means you're going to have fewer open spots. Right now, part of the charm, if you will, of the UEFA Nations League is that it leaves it open for teams from Europe to still play friendlies with teams from outside Europe.
Yep.
If you're playing every single international date, you're playing one of these Nations League games, then you don't have time to do that.
There's no room for anything else, right? The other part of it to me is with 3 teams, it keeps a lot of possibilities and drama alive throughout the entire thing, right? There's no mid-table, right? If you finish mid-table, you're the one team that's not either winning the league or finishing bottom.
Yep.
So I'm sure there'll be drama down to the very last day because the groups are so small.
That's a really interesting point for 2 reasons. One, what you said, but 2, it just made me realize something. Part of the confusing nature of this, I think, is that it's groups of 3, which stands at odds with what we're used to now.
Yes.
But in 2026, when we change the format of the World Cup and it becomes 3-team groups, it probably doesn't stand out as much anymore. Exactly. So maybe it is just a product of current thinking or predominant way of approaching it. Yeah.
They used to do it. They used to do groups of 3 back in the older World Cups. Okay. The third question we got about the UEFA last summer, the UEFA Nations League, comes from Soccer Thoughts, who did not give their real name and gave their email as no@fakeemail.com.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure everyone please email that.
You don't know if Soccer Thoughts' first name is No? No Soccer Thoughts? There you go.
Soccer Thoughts wants to know, because of fewer friendlies, will the UEFA Nations League make it harder for young players to break into their national teams? I want to start basic with this. Why would that? I'm going to play devil's advocate. Why would that be the case, Taylor?
Because if the idea would be that if you have like meaningful competitions where the results matter, you maybe don't want to take a gamble as much as you would if you're Gareth Southgate playing a friendly and you want to see what this youngster can do or that youngster can do. Can Reece Oxford hang with the national team? Let's give him 15 minutes and find out. You're not going to take that gamble in an official competition. And also, as I've already said, if you don't have those 3 extra subs that you would have in a friendly,
that's true.
That's 3 fewer caps you're going to get.
Often debuts are that 5th or 6th sub, right? Yep. So in one way, yes.
Yep.
But in another way, I would say that when you get your debut and it's in a competitive game in a UEFA Nations League game, it means a lot more.
Yep.
Right? 10 minutes against Luxembourg in a friendly is not that important, but 10 minutes against Spain in the UEFA Nations League it's a much sterner test. So if you do make your debut, it will be in a more important setting. So it means more, right?
Yeah.
I would also say, as you just mentioned, there are still dates for friendlies.
Yep.
Using England again as the example, they play Spain on Saturday in the UEFA Nations League. And then, I don't know the exact day yet, but the next week, there's a friendly against Switzerland.
Yeah.
So that's a chance for a debut for someone.
True, but it still means that either you're going to have to change the squad you have if you're Gareth Southgate, or you're going to have to send a bunch of people home and bring in young players. You have an abbreviated time frame to train. So I don't know if that works as well.
But I think what you'll see is a squad of 23 selected, and you'll essentially play your best team, what you think is your most competitive, experienced, like ready-to-go team in the game where points are at stake. And then that means that after that is over, you'd almost imagine that the club managers would prefer this as well. The more important senior guys can maybe be rested and the younger guys can get a chance in the friendlies.
Yeah.
So it may all work out nicely.
Yeah, there's all of that. The other thing I would add, maybe this is like me being ignorant, but I do feel like in the past 10 years or so, the emphasis, maybe even fewer than that, the emphasis on youth tournaments has expanded like a lot. I would
say,
like
the U20 World Cup?
Yeah, like U20 World Cup, the U19 Euros. Like I just think there's more emphasis on those competitions. There's a little bit more coverage. There's more awareness of them. And I think it's because players are getting younger and younger.
I will say that may just be the life that you and I are living.
That's a distinct possibility. But I would say that maybe...
We're watching U20 World Cup in the middle of the night. Not everybody's doing that.
Yeah, there's that. But I would say like there's a chance, though, that this allows you to avoid situations like there was with Munir El Haddadi this summer when he wanted to try to play for Morocco, I believe it was, but had already been capped by Spain. Maybe if it's harder to get that cap, it's more impactful. It means like you are with that team.
You got to really make the commitment.
You've really got to make that commitment. Whereas,
Jack Grealish.
Otherwise, you can stay with your you could turn down a call up and say like, no, I want to keep playing for the U21s because even if you play in an official competition with the youth national team, you can still file that one-time switch. So maybe it's that as well. You get more players playing for like younger national teams, and those competitions become better as a result.
Speaking of younger national teams, taking part in the inaugural UEFA Nations League, Gibraltar.
Yep.
And Kosovo.
Yeah.
So it'd be really interesting to see those new teams taking their first steps in international football.
This was not intentional, but thank you for this because I made fun of Mustafi on the Weekend Review show. Mustafi, after he scored his header, he did the Albanian Eagle, and I was saying like it just seemed like he was sort of like, hey, I get this.
Is he Kosovan as well?
He is Kosovan as well. Yes, his family is. I think it's on his dad's side. Maybe it's both. But either way, but now there's speculation that maybe he'll get some sort of ban or sanction because that's what happened to those players in the World Cup.
Interesting.
Yes.
So that wasn't just a celebration of Xhaka. It was Mustafi like, hey, me and you, compatriots.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so UEFA Nations League actually starts on Thursday in League A with Germany versus France. A1, Germany versus France. After Germany's World Cup and France's World Cup, I think that's a really interesting game.
I'll watch that game.
I've heard of
Germany and France.
You've heard of them? Yeah. Two of the bigger countries in Europe.
Yeah, a little bit, but mostly from their soccer history. That's what I know of them. Nothing else. Nothing else.
Do you have something else to say? I've got one more thing on Nations League before we move on.
You do that because mine doesn't connect to Nations League.
Okay. People may be wondering, is this going to happen in the rest of the world?
Yep.
The answer is yes.
Yep.
CONCACAF are already doing it. They've already gone through the phase of calling it the CONCACAF League of Nations and then thinking, oh no, that sounds like that thing that failed.
Yeah.
Let's call it the CONCACAF Nations League. If you're a US fan or a Mexico fan or a Costa Rica fan, a fan of one of the bigger nations, those teams will play in the group phase September 2019. September, October, November 2019. CONCACAF Nations League will basically work exactly the same as the UEFA Nations League that we're seeing this year.
Gotcha.
What's happening is right now through to March, there's qualifying games for the smaller CONCACAF nations to get into the group phase. So the US has to wait till September 2019, then we'll be experiencing the exact same thing that you're about to see in Europe.
There we go. All right. The thing I was going to add...
It's like a fashion that starts out in Europe and ends up in the US. Like European man purses.
I think it goes the other way around. I think it starts here and goes there. It doesn't. No, that's just definitely me being
Did you not enjoy my Seinfeld
an ugly
reference?
American. Oh, I got you. Except that is, in fact, the popular fad right now.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Pharrell was carrying a purse and suddenly everybody was like, I must have one.
Yes.
Yeah. I wanted to add to Soccer Thoughts' no@fakeemail.com thing. Okay. correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say this. We are not collecting emails for any reason. We will never never put you on a newsletter. We'll never use that for anything else. Literally, the only reason why I think we ask for an email is so we have a way to get back to people if we need to respond or clarify something.
If we need clarification on the question, that's why.
Yeah, so I just want to make that point because I definitely have hesitation ever giving an email address because I don't want my inbox to just fill up with spam that I didn't sign up for.
Yeah.
We will not do that. So don't hesitate to ask us questions.
I always give yours.
That's fair.
Are you ready for the next question?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm looking at you kind of skeptically because I'm wondering if maybe you actually do that. Next question comes from Logan Weening. Logan says or asks, how far down the pyramid in top countries such as England and Germany are players full-time professionals? In the United States, based on that Athletic article, it seems like second-tier players are barely making it. So what about elsewhere?
So if you didn't hear, we talked about Jeff Reuter's Athletic article that talked a lot about USL teams who, some of their players were getting paid very, very little and only for like 8 months of the year. And some guys were on literally $0 contracts where you only got paid if you made an appearance. So Logan's question makes a lot of sense to see how the US compares.
Yep.
I'd like to also thank Logan for referring to England as a top country.
There you go.
It's very generous. But how far down the pyramid in, say, England and Germany are players full-time professionals?
We've already established it's a small country now, so you guys need as much positive support as you can get.
Thanks, Cameron. So in England... definitely down to the fourth tier.
Yep.
So Premier League, Championship, League One, League Two. That's the Football League. That's all full-time professional. But mostly the fifth tier, the National League, it's called, the fifth tier is mostly professional. There are some semi-pro clubs in there, but almost everybody in the National League is making a full-time living because most of those clubs are ambitious and want to get to League Two. They want to get to the official professional pyramid. So I'd say you could go as far as the fifth tier in England. Below that, it gets regional. So below the National League, you have like National North and National South, and it devolves into regions from there. Players are getting paid a long way down, but not full-time pay, if that makes sense.
But no, are there rules against it, or could you do that if you wanted to start at like a lower tier level and build a club up?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, this happened. The league that my team, my local team, Halesowen Town, played in is the 7th or 8th tier. And I think Dagenham and Redbridge was bought... No, Rushden and Diamonds. Rushden and Diamonds were bought by the people that own Dr. Martens boots. And they built a new stadium and started paying the players a lot more. And they started to rise up the divisions. So it's possible to spend as much as you want.
I'm assuming that's actually what Salford City are doing. The one that's...
Something like that, yeah.
Owned by the class of 92, basically?
Yes, exactly, yeah. So I've got a good example of how far down you get paid. My nephew is a very good footballer, but not like a full-time professional footballer. He's going to be an accountant. Just graduated school. He plays in the West Midlands Regional League Premier Division, which is the 10th tier. And I'm sure you won't mind me sharing, but he gets paid about £100 a game, right? Not enough to live on. So he's not a full-time professional footballer. But you're getting paid that far down. It just depends how much you're getting paid.
What was the division again?
The West Midlands Regional League Premier Division.
Do you think the problem is that we've simplified our league names too much? Like, do you think USL is too simple? Does it need to become like the United Soccer Western, Eastern, Northern League of Southern California?
Well, to a serious point, I think what we need is for there to be so many teams and enough interest that when you have a regional league, there's enough money to pay people.
Well, that would be one way to do it, yeah.
And if you want to follow my nephew's team, it's Tiverdale FC. And if you see Daniel Smith on the score sheet, then he's got himself a goal bonus.
It's not time for you to do self-promotion, Daryl. It's time for us to do other promotion because we need to talk about today's sponsor. But first, you have more to say.
Germany. So Logan also asked about Germany.
Yep.
I looked into it. So Bundesliga, 2 Bundesliga, 3 Bundesliga.
I've heard of them.
They're all national.
Yep.
They're all professional. Below that is the regional Liga. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but that's when it gets regional. That's when it gets semi-pro. So most teams in the regional Liga, those players aren't earning a full-time living semi-pro.
Except for, I think that's where, I know this doesn't necessarily help us be succinct, but except for like Dortmund 2 are playing in the regional Liga, right? But I would assume that those players are all being fully paid.
That would make sense, yeah. And it's actually, that's a really good point because it's often a blend, right? It's not like if you're in this division, then you're all semi-pro or you're all professional, especially as you go further down the pyramid, excuse me. There's going to be a blend of certain teams have more money and a more professional setup. Certain teams can only pay some players. You know what I'm saying? So it gets very blended the further down you go.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right. So Germany and England figuring it out. America needs to do the same.
I mean, yeah, slowly but surely, right? Yeah.
People need livable wages and whatnot.
They do. Mm-hmm.
So we're going to get into maybe some more issues facing U.S. soccer in a second. We're going to talk about Ernie Stewart, some other issues.
A month on the job.
Yeah. But first, we need to talk about today's sponsor, Simple Contacts.
Simple Contacts. Thank you to Simple Contacts for sponsoring today's show. Simple Contacts makes it easy to renew your prescription and get contact lenses online.
How easy, Daryl?
Very easy. First of all, if your prescription is still current, you can just straight up go through Simple Contacts through the app or the website and order yourself some new contacts so that when you play soccer, you can see all the other players. If your prescription needs to be renewed, instead of going to your optician, you can do the vision test online. You open your app up or you open your laptop up and you do they put the letters and you cover the one eye and you do that whole thing. You can do that, get yourself a new prescription.
There we go. And what about if you maybe are a forgetful person who forgets to refill your prescription or refill your contacts order?
Right? Yeah. I got a text this morning from Simple Contacts because I'm a Simple Contacts customer. They said, do you want your contact lenses order renewed and sent to you? Just respond yes and we'll ship your next order. You can also hit snooze, which I think is a really cute touch. So if I was to text back yes, I haven't done it yet, I think I'm going to, they'll just, they'll recharge, redo my order, send me my contacts, so I'll have them. If I hit snooze, I'm guessing they'll remind me again in 10 minutes? No, in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, just keep going every 9 minutes until you hear from them. I really appreciate this.
I do hit snooze on this phone quite a lot.
Yeah. I really appreciate this because, like what we were just talking about previously, like I do not love giving out my email address. I definitely don't love giving my phone number. I don't want to get random texts from random companies.
Yeah.
But it's strange how stuff like this, refilling a prescription or just refilling an order or something like that, it's important enough that you need to deal with it, but it's small enough that it's easy to forget.
Yeah.
And it becomes one of those things
I've had contact lens emergencies.
It's been like 2 weeks and I forgot to do this. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. And then you don't do it.
I'm going to guess your wife has had the same thing, right?
Oh, 100%.
You just run out. Yeah. Simple Contacts helps you not run out.
I very much appreciate that.
They also help you get $20 off your contact lenses. If you go to simplecontacts.com/TSS20, that's the letters TSS and the number 2020, or you enter the code TSS20 at checkout, you'll get $20 off your contact lenses at simplecontacts.com/TSS20.
And it's important to remember this is not a replacement for your periodic full eye health exam, but it is a way to keep your eyes from being red and itchy and in pain all the time.
Thank you to Simple Contacts for sponsoring today's show. Ready for more questions?
I am. I always am.
Who's up next, Taylor?
Up next is Randolph Scully, who asks, even though Ernie Stewart has only been in the job for a month, how seriously should we take the reported lack of progress in the U.S. men's national team coaching search and the lack of clarity about his actual role and responsibilities?
Okay, so to back up, Ernie Stewart is the general manager of the U.S. men's national team. He started August 1st. I think I read in a Leander Shalakan's article for Yahoo that this was a weird compromise because of Ernie Stewart's job at Philadelphia Union, where he was, director of soccer or technical director. He didn't see out the whole year with Philly, but he also didn't break his contract straight away. So this was a midpoint where he could do Philly stuff till end of July,
do Philly stuff,
then take over US soccer. Here's the interesting part that really applies to this question. According to Leander Shalakan's reporting, because Ernie Stewart is a stand-up guy, he didn't do any US soccer work while he was still employed by Philadelphia Union. So there were no backdoor or sort of secret contacts to, say, Juan Carlos Osorio or Jorge Sampaoli or anyone like that. He really didn't start work till August 1st.
Right.
Hence, we still have Dave Sarakin as the interim coach. And hence, Juan Carlos Osorio is now the coach of Paraguay. That's been announced. Wasn't even contacted by US Soccer, didn't have an interview. US Soccer hasn't conducted any interviews.
I can't tell if you're being rational or you're being too forgiving to U.S. soccer. I genuinely can't. Because I find myself,
honest, I don't know.
I find myself more frustrated by this than you, it seems, at least, based on that your description.
So part of my let's talk this. We really haven't talked about this, have we? Let's talk this out. Part of me thinks it would make everyone feel better and less annoyed if they just appointed a coach as soon as possible.
Yeah.
But at the same time, all we really need right now is for the young players to get a chance and start building towards the future. And Dave Sarakin's doing that. The Gold Cup isn't until next summer. So really, if we appoint a new coach in January, it's kind of okay, right? There's not World Cup qualification on the horizon or anything like that. The only reason to appoint someone quickly is to sort of calm the masses.
There's that. There's also the fact that lots of other national teams are looking for managers. And the longer you wait, the fewer options you have.
Right. So it's been like last to the...
Theoretically.
It's been like last to the grocery store when there's a hurricane coming.
Yes.
You're like, why is there no bread?
Unless you're waiting to shop at a specific grocery store where other people aren't going to be shopping, and then you're fine to wait, which is maybe what's happening, in my opinion.
Oh, so we're looking for like an organic manager.
Sure. That's a good way to put it, I guess. Yeah, because, I mean, this... I don't know if I would have been as frustrated as much, and I didn't even necessarily want...
You are frustrated.
Yeah, because I didn't even necessarily want Juan Carlos Osorio to be the manager.
Right.
That wasn't one that I was like, yes, 100%, he's going to fix everything. He is the solution. But I found Ivis Galarcep tweeted last night. His tweet was a little unsettling because he reported it was basically a very good tweet because it had 4 key pieces of information said very fast. First one, Juan Carlos Osorio has been named the new manager of the Paraguay national team. Number 2, Paraguay pulled out all the stops to get him, giving him a lot of control of a program with some good young talent. Here we go. Osorio never spoke to the U.S. men's national team. Ernie Stewart hasn't interviewed any candidates yet.
Yeah.
So
that's what I just said at the top of this.
Yeah, but I think it was like that news sort of all hitting at once that it was like, oh, people are throwing stuff at other managers to try to get them to commit. U.S. Soccer isn't interviewing anybody yet, hasn't even really looked for anybody, never made even like kind of passing contact with Juan Carlos Osorio to say, hey, you're on the radar. Would you be interested in having a conversation? Something like that.
Yeah.
And so it feels to me like Ernie Stewart isn't stupid, so he has to then have a plan, and there's no way that if Juan Carlos Osorio were available and interested, as maybe he was, they would have just said no unless they had another idea, and I think they have another idea, and I think that idea is a manager from MLS.
It seems to me the timing of when Dave Sarakin's contract runs out, which is towards the end of the year, and when Major League Soccer 2018 season ends, just towards the end of the year, seems to all line up for it being like Greg Berhalter, Peter Vermees.
I've got
Tata Martino.
Yeah, Tata Martino is the other one.
That's
Todd Ramos,
optimistic.
not necessarily dependent on MLS's season, but he's the other like domestic name that gets bandied about.
But I was weirdly convinced by Leander's article for Yahoo, where he talked about everybody wants US Soccer to do it fast, but they also need to take their time and do it right. And it's almost like you can't get both things at once. So what I want is I'm okay with waiting, provided that there is a lot of diligence and behind-the-scenes work being done, and the final appointment isn't some crazy gamble. It's like something that's really well thought through, to the point where the coach they select fits a style and a type of person that even if it doesn't work out with them, the next person is still in that same sort of mold. You know what I'm saying? Like, have a long-term plan and then execute it. I'm okay taking our time if what we get is something that's well thought out.
I have a question for you that like is putting you on the spot a little bit. What would be a crazy alternative? Like when you say like, oh, I can't believe like they hired this person. Who would that be?
Honestly, like a celebrity coach. Okay. I think to me, in a way, the way that Klinsmann was.
Gotcha.
Someone who's just sort of comes in with a big name and a big reputation, but doesn't necessarily fit in with long-term plans.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
That makes sense. That makes sense to me. I think the issue for me is about transparency because it's sort of like I think I had this expectation that like this is the biggest issue facing U.S. men's soccer right now is who's going to be the coach of the future and how are they going to approach the future.
Yeah.
And so I had this idea like that everybody must be thinking about this all day, every day, working on it, talking to people, getting consensus, maybe interviewing some people. And it feels like maybe that isn't necessarily the case. And I think I did see it reported that Ernie Stewart was expected to give an update on the process this week. So we'll see if that happens. But if it continues to be something that we kind of don't know what's happening and we don't know if wheels are turning or if it's kind of sitting until the end of the year, that's where I think my slight frustration grows into more agitation.
Well, the one thing I am frustrated with is the lack of information.
Yep.
I think I've said this many, many times, so stop me if you've heard this one before. The US Soccer does not give enough information.
Yep.
We're always the last to announce that a game is happening. We are always, when a game's happening, we're the team that announces their roster the latest, right? And this like Sarakin being the interim coach, that has been like that news has been slowly dripped out. There was never okay, here's the long-term plan. He's going to be the coach till December 2018. That just slowly leaked out, right? And there's been no update unless Ernie Stewart is going to really lay things down for us. There's been no update on here's where we are, here's what we're doing. Yep. So essentially, there's not enough news about this process, and it leaves everybody feeling frustrated.
Yeah.
So I think, being here long enough and watching the US national team long enough, that feels par for the course that I'm frustrated with, but just as a general thing, not as a right now thing.
Okay. I'm with you.
That makes sense?
Can I ask you this, though?
Yeah.
Aware that we had a conversation about conspiracy theories before we started recording.
Yeah.
Is there a chance Is there a chance? I'm not saying I think this is likely. I'm not saying this is what's happening. I did wonder this. Is there a chance that the way the Dave Sarachan thing has happened, how it's sort of been like, oh yeah, we extended him. Oh yeah, we're going to give him 2 more months. Is there a chance that U.S. Soccer wants Dave Sarachan or is thinking about hiring Dave Sarachan and wants enough time to pass so people aren't as frustrated with the failure to qualify and his role in that?
Yeah.
And also maybe he keeps giving young players their caps. It seems like everybody's happy. You get all these happy sound bites about how good of a coach he is and how people love playing for him. He gets some good results, and suddenly it's maybe a more justifiable hire, and that's why you're not hearing as much about people they're talking to?
I don't think that big conspiracy is happening.
Okay.
Like, I think it could accidentally happen, right?
Yeah.
It could accidentally happen because like results get really good and everybody starts to really like Dave Sarachan and then he gets the job. But I don't think that will have been the long-term plan.
Yeah.
And if it was, I'll have been very impressed with US Soccer for having a long-term plan.
Hey, man. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I just keep going back to, like, I know it's an emotional thing for me why I don't think it should be Dave Sarachan.
Yeah.
But the more you see those quotes, the one I saw today was DeAndre Yedlin talking about how he loves playing for Dave Sarachan. And it's like, have you played for Dave Sarachan? When did that happen? But okay. And you just see those little moments. You see young players talking about how much that first cap meant and how much getting it from Dave Sarachan was meaningful.
Yeah.
And it just sort of tilts the head of like, wait a minute, is there like a little bit of a campaign
to
happening?
confirm, I don't think that's the plan.
Okay.
I just think US Soccer thinks everybody's happy with him as a placeholder and we'll take our time, especially because it's a whole new setup with Ernie Stewart as GM. We'll take our time appointing the next guy. And so my final point on this is to say that I'm okay with them taking their time if they appoint the right person.
Okay.
Because then it's time well spent, right?
All right.
But if it's take loads of time and then it's like having homework that's due 3 months from now and you don't start doing it till 2 nights before it's due, that's not a good use of time, right? So I hope there's not a panic appointment in November.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask you one more semi-conspiracy one that we can move on? You can see my previous answer if you want. Is there a chance that they know they want to hire Greg Berhalter, but they're not sure they want to subject Columbus Crew fans to more misery by taking away their head coach mid-season?
I do think there's a chance that they're going to appoint someone who is the current head coach of a Major League Soccer team.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that as if I know, but I'm saying if it's Berhalter or Vermees or someone like that, I do think there's a chance that maybe that's who they're looking at, but they don't want to say that right now because it's so long between now and the end of the season. That's the type of thing where I would prefer that US Soccer just got out in front and said, here's what's happening.
Yeah.
Right? Rather than springing that on us as soon as Columbus Crew are out of the playoffs or Sporting KC are out of the playoffs.
Yeah, and
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm with you because
just tell us.
I want to say this, like, I believe I'm correct in saying like you have NFL fans know when their team is interviewing somebody. They don't always know everybody, but they know, oh, this person was called, that coordinator, this coordinator was brought in, and there is at least
this is the weird rule where Wayne Rooney gets to interview for every NFL
single time. It's
job.
really, really weird. Yeah, you wouldn't think he would know that much. Yes. So and maybe that's part of it is that you have the Rooney rule, so there is an emphasis on you've got to make it clear that you've interviewed enough candidates from enough backgrounds, but it's still like I at least appreciate that much that we know, like, oh, he went in for an interview, but maybe it didn't go that well. Maybe he like, and you'll hear that sometimes of like, yeah, we just had a different vision about the way we wanted the franchise to go, so we looked elsewhere. And that, I think, satisfies a lot of fans just to know that there's a process in place and people are getting interviews and getting talked to.
Okay. And I also just feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm just getting older, but I've got patience, right? There's no immediate need to hire someone right now. So I'm okay as long as we end up with the right person.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. There we go.
A lot of listeners will feel differently.
And that tends to happen once you stop looking. You find the right person. So maybe that's the US Soccer approach.
It's what happened to me.
I hope not.
If you disagree, please send your angry thoughts to no@fakeemail.com.
Yeah. Or contact@ussoccer.org, I'm guessing.
Don't.
Okay.
We don't want to be responsible for encouraging that.
Nah.
Ready for another question? Next question comes from Ize Conde.
Yep.
Ize Conde wants to know, you guys did the how would the US do if they were a Premier League team question. And we said essentially they'd be battling relegation because the defence wasn't quite up to scratch.
I'm not sure
right?
they would be battling.
Where would you rank the MLS All-Stars?
Yeah.
How would the MLS All-Stars do in the Premier League? Would they be fighting relegation or would they be just above relegation? I mean, I think also, if we think they win the league, we should say that as well.
Sure.
What do we think the MLS All-Stars will be doing in the Premier League?
I'm going to put on my like lawyer adjacent hat for a moment and say, I think
you actually have one of those.
I do. It says adjacent on it, and it's got a lot of complicated legalese. I think it would depend on how we're defining the All-Star team. If you'll forgive me for that.
Let's take the 2018 All-Stars.
Well, here's what I would say. If you take the 2018 MLS All-Stars, I don't think they would do well. If you gave Tata Martino free pick of Major League Soccer and said you have to form a roster that's going to play in the Premier League.
Oh, I see.
I think they hang in there. I really do.
Really?
I think All-Star teams are always more offensive. You have the fan vote, so that factors into it. You're not just getting who is in the best form, playing the best soccer in every single position with the backup.
All-Star votes tend to always play 3 at the back because no one ever wants to pick more than 3 defenders.
Wasn't Alphonso Davies playing like left center back at the end of the All-Star game, or left wing back,
either
or
left back
back
or right back? Yeah.
So like that, like you're not going to have that work in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Like, I mean this as like look at Ryan Sessegnon and some of the struggles he's had that he didn't have in the championship.
Yeah.
Like it's just that much faster, that much harder. You may be an amazing player, but you've still got to deal with an amazing league.
I think regardless of whether it's the actual 2018 All-Star roster or Tata Martino is allowed to, and we're taking him because he was the coach of the 2018 All-Stars, he's allowed to build a roster for the Premier League. I just don't think the defensive talent is there to survive.
That's probably it. You're right.
I think the attacking talent is there to survive.
You're
whether it's
right.
like Giovinco and Joseph Martinez, that can hang, right?
I mean, on that All-Star roster before they withdrew were David Villa and Zlatan Ibrahimovic.
There you go.
I think a lot of Premier League teams would take a gamble on those teams.
Yeah, so even in midfield, I think you can make a case that there's enough talent to get away with it.
I'm making that fundamental mistake.
But here's the 2018 All-Star defense.
Yeah.
Brad Guzan and Zach Steffen, split time in goal. I love Zach Steffen. I admire Brad Guzan. I don't think either of them would do well in the Premier League right now. I mean, Brad Guzan really got beat up in his final Premier League season. Do you remember all the 5-hole game?
Yes.
Yeah. Defenders in that game.
I'm frustrated that you're making a very good point here.
Defenders in that All-Star game were Michael Parkhurst. Yeah. There were Calvo, Lawrence Siman, Matt Hedges. Those guys are not going to form... I mean, they could maybe hang individually surrounded by 3 other better players, but that sort of defence is not going to cut it in the Premier League. Graham Zusi, Aaron Long, we're optimistic about, but Premier League teams aren't knocking the door down to get Aaron Long right now. Murillo from New York Red Bulls. Like, these are good players.
No, you've got a point.
They're
You're
not good enough Premier League
The defense
players.
is the issue. You're right.
And the problem is that the way MLS is structured with the salary cap and all that, money gets spent top heavy. Money gets spent on sometimes defensive midfielders, but mostly attacking midfielders and strikers and wingers. And, you know, I understand why. But it means that most MLS teams, and therefore the entire league, is lacking in investment in defenders. Take that to the Premier League, you're going to be in all kinds of trouble.
That's a really good point. You're absolutely right. I think defense is the issue I hadn't thought about, as well as goalkeeper.
Yeah.
So, okay. Maybe they're still in that same position, struggling.
I think what you really need is maybe... I was going to say if you could combine the US national team and MLS All-Stars, you're still probably defensively light.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, but it's a great question, Izzo. That's the third question about how would X do in the Premier League, right? It started with the US national team, France or Brazil, and now MLS All-Stars.
Yeah. I like these because they really do make me think a bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
I'm frustrated that one of those ways wasn't to think about defense, and so I went the error-prone route of just get all the attackers in there, even as I criticize All-Star teams for having too many attackers.
You know the old saying, offense sells tickets, defense keeps you above the relegation.
There we go. That is what they say. Do you know what else they say?
What do they say?
If you're hungry and you don't want to poison your body with terrible food, eat an RX bar.
Today's show is sponsored by RX Bar.
Yep.
RX Bar has graced our office many, many times. I believe they graced your belly as recently as last night, Taylor.
They certainly did, because I came in to start working on the acoustic foam wall last night.
Yep.
I knew that I had forgotten to eat dinner, as I tend to do when I'm doing projects throughout the day. It suddenly was like, it's 9 p.m. and I haven't eaten anything since 11. That was bad.
You really did that?
So
those types of things are only meant to happen in ad copy. You actually lived it.
That really did happen. So then I went to the convenience store around the corner and looked at everything they had and was just like, I'm going to hate myself. That's not going to work out well for me tomorrow. RX Bar it is.
RX Bar, it's a whole food protein bar. That means they're made with real whole ingredients and they're transparent about what is in the RX Bar. The ingredients are listed right on the front.
And 24-year-old Taylor might have thought that Spicy Big Bite was a good decision. 34-year-old Taylor thinks the mint chocolate RX Bar is still the way to go.
I knew 24-year-old Taylor.
Yep.
Mint chocolate is my favourite flavour
of
RX Bar. There are also 14 different RX Bar flavours. I won't list them all here now.
There's a mango in there, and I'm all about some mango too.
Is there a mango? I'm looking at the list. Are you sure about that?
I am very confident.
Mango
that
pineapple. There's a
go.
mango pineapple. My two favourites are mint chocolate and chocolate sea salt. You really taste the salt and the chocolate. I love it. You can. Oh, there's also nut butter. It's a recent addition is the RX nut butter, which is slightly different. It's got fruits and nuts and egg whites, and each packet contains delicious creamy nut butter with 9 grams of high quality protein. It's squeezable and spreadable, and you know how much I love alliteration.
I know you do, my friend. Alliteration and puns. 1 and 2. No, actually 2 and 1 in Daryl's side. Yeah.
And a close third is getting 25% off your first order. And to do that with RX Bar, you go to rxbar.com/soccer, and they make you work hard for it. You got to do it twice. Enter the promo code soccer at checkout. So you go to rxbar.com/soccer and enter the promo code soccer at checkout for 25% off your first RX Bar order.
Thank you to RX Bar, as ever, for sponsoring today's program and for making me happy last night and not hate myself this morning. So with that said, Daryl, we've got 2 more questions.
Ooh.
It's time to get serious.
Okay, so it's 2 questions, but it's more or less the same
Yep.
question. So I thought we'd ask them together.
Sure.
So this is going to be different to what we normally do, but do you mind if I'm going to read both questions at you?
Nope.
First one comes from Scott Solari.
Read them at me.
I'm going to read them at you. Scott Solari asks, why is Qatar still being allowed to host the 2022 World Cup? Why is FIFA and why is the world not talking more about the atrocities that are happening? The atrocities being the treatment of the workers building the stadiums. I've forgotten the name of the system, but basically slave-like labour where people are being killed as they work.
Kafala system?
Kafala system.
That might be, I might have made that up. That might be
Yeah,
something else
no, it's where
entirely.
they take your passport and you can't leave, essentially, right?
It's like sponsored work, but...
Yeah, and the employer has
lovely
far too
euphemism.
much control over you, right? And you're working in too hot conditions, and literally people are dying, thousands of people.
You literally can't leave.
So Scott says, I know this is not the... you can't go home. I know this is not the happiest of topics, but it is a serious one.
Yeah.
How can any soccer fan watch the next World Cup without guilt and without feeling like a hypocrite? All right, so that's heavy.
Yep.
Correctly. Hold on to that question from Scott. Phil Doucette asks a similar question. Phil says, I'm excited for the new US national team cycle, but I can't shake the real conflicting feelings I have about the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, specifically the reports of deplorable worker conditions and deaths. Do you feel a call for a boycott is practical, or is it overly naive? What are effective ways that fans of soccer and human rights can put pressure on FIFA and the upcoming host nation, Qatar, to improve conditions for those building the infrastructure for the men's tournament? Whew, okay.
Okay, where should we start?
Let's start with the end of Scott's question.
Sure.
How can any soccer fan watch the next World Cup without guilt and feeling like a hypocrite?
I mean, it's going to be tough. I'll say that much. I think... Actually, I'm going to kind of combine a couple of the answers here because I also don't think there's much that you can do. And I think that factors into my answer. Like, I think there are things. We're going to talk about those. But I think it's not as though you, Scott, or you, Phil, or you, Daryl, refusing to watch the World Cup is going to make the World Cup stop. It might make you feel better. It might make you feel like I'm not participating in this event because of what's happened. But at that point, you're kind of depriving yourself of one of the greatest sporting spectacles in the world.
Yep.
So I think the way you have to do it, or at least the way I plan to do it, aside from remaining active in the next few years to stay vocal and keep talking to people on the show and have people on to talk about what's going on in Qatar, to keep it front and center, or to keep it as center as we can. But I think the other thing you can do is separate the politics from the sporting event, but also not let the politics and the sporting event be separated at the same time.
How do you do that?
So you can watch the tournament, you can enjoy the World Cup for being the World Cup, but when whomever is broadcasting the World Cup, likely Fox, when Fox does a whole story
Definitely
about...
Fox has 2022.
You know, I'm just saying you never know what happens with things. But I'm just saying, not that that's an indication of anything we've heard, just, I don't know. I don't know with Fox. Who knows what they'll do. But don't let them do a story about how great the stadium process. Don't let them do those puff pieces. Don't let them do that. And if they do,
the one about Stalin at the World Cup.
Say what you will about Stalin. Yeah, say what you will about indentured servitude. Don't buy into that. Don't buy into the sort of glossy narrative. And really, we kind of did that with Russia. We didn't buy into Stalin's house is nice. But you look at the way we dealt with the Pussy Riot pitch invasion, we sort of were that's kind of silly. Why would you do that? Why would you disrupt the World Cup final?
Yeah.
And then to learn more about it and understand more about the movement and why they do it the way they do it, it makes a lot more sense. And so I think you got to kind of keep the two in your mind when you watch the tournament. I'll
own the hypocrisy of us in for the 2018 World Cup.
Yeah.
I thought ahead of time, I'm sure people can guess I'm not a fan of Vladimir Putin or Russia. I really thought, we're going to cover this tournament, but we're going to make sure to, really keep an eye on all the Putin type things. But in the end, there was just so much soccer and so much World Cup. We just ended up covering the soccer, right? And I'm genuinely angry that Putin was allowed to use the World Cup as a platform to sort of project Russian greatness. But in the end, I was more interested in England's 3-5-2 and all that kind of stuff. There was just too much soccer. And I honestly think the same thing's going to happen to me in 2022. I'm going to feel terrible that the World Cup is in Qatar. Like, it should not be there. It should have been taken away from them as soon as we realised people were dying to build the stadiums. But like you said earlier, it's too hard to look away because I just love soccer so much. It's going to be such a big story. I'm hopefully going to be watching the England team and the US national team and all the other teams that I'll kind of just watch the soccer. And I think at some level I'm going to have to own that hypocrisy.
Yeah, I mean, I think to some extent we will have to because we're going to watch it. We're going to cover it. I'll say this, I'm not going to it. And that's one thing you can do is...
That's one thing we could have gone to 2018, right? We just maybe had the budget for World Cup, for Total Soccer Show to go to a World Cup, and we decided we're not going to.
I don't want to go to Russia, and I don't want to go to Qatar. Like I think Qatar will be. Full disclosure, like I've only been to the World Cup when it was here in '94. I went to like one game. That's the only time I've been to a World Cup. But I would say that my understanding of the way the culture and vibe of a World Cup, like the way it usually is, I feel like it won't be the same in Qatar. Yes, they're going to have areas where you can drink and they're going to relax certain laws, but it still will feel, I think at its core, like a manufactured event, more so than this organic sporting event that happens every 4 years.
So do you want to buy a ticket and walk into a stadium knowing that people died to build that stadium?
I don't. And so I think with all that said, I'm framing it the way I am to say I also don't think you're missing that much if you choose to, instead of going to Qatar, stay home and give your money to a local team, go attend a local team and watch some games during the day and then, give them your money in the evening, or go to the Women's World Cup, or attend some women's. Like, do other things with your money aside from give it to FIFA and Qatar.
Okay, so assuming that you don't go to Qatar for the World Cup, but you do watch the games because it's the World Cup and you can't help but watch it, which is going to be my situation. I'm assuming it's going to be your situation. I kind of hope you watch it with me because the show's in trouble. If not, to Phil's question, what are some effective ways that we could, protest FIFA or, assert the importance of human rights on FIFA or Qatar?
Yeah, unless you're like a federal prosecutor or an attorney general, I don't know how much pressure you can put on FIFA.
Is that it? Are we too small to do anything about this?
No.
Okay.
Yes, but no. No, you're never going to be able to get a one-on-one meeting with Infantino to talk about the state of things. As is always the case in the world, money talks. And if you really want to try to get FIFA to have to deal with some things that maybe they're not dealing with, I think they are sort of hoping that it all blows over. The World Cup comes about. Everybody's excited about a World Cup. So, oh well. That's, I think, the approach they're taking.
Yep.
Money talks. Email Pepsi, email Coke, email Adidas, whoever is going to be the sponsor, and start a letter writing campaign, because if the sponsors ask the questions, that's who FIFA will answer to. They won't answer to a bunch of people sending in emails. They'll answer to the marketing director of Coca-Cola saying, hey, we're getting a lot of negative pushback on this. What are you all doing to deal with it?
I mean, can you get enough people to do that, though? I think the thing that concerns me is there are more people who want to passively consume the World Cup and therefore buy the advertising or consume the advertising of the tournament sponsors, then there are people who are willing to write letters and protest. And in the end, the sponsor and FIFA and the host nation are all going to see that the balance is in their favor, that people are just going to consume.
I think the flaw in that logic is that you're counting passive as negative, as in the passive viewers aren't writing to Coca-Cola and saying, I love that you're sponsoring the World Cup. They're doing nothing because they're passive.
Yeah.
Whereas a couple thousand people emailing a sponsor or writing a letter, handwriting a letter, that carries more weight, right? That hand letter. That I think suddenly if you get 1,000 letters saying we are against this tournament and you supporting this tournament, that carries more weight. Yes, people will, on the whole, still watch the tournament.
Yeah.
But it's not that people are emailing those companies to say it's great that you're sponsoring.
Do you know what I've just realized is I didn't really research my answer to this question. I just thought about my answer to this question. It just occurred to me that maybe there is an organization out there that is already putting together this type of pressure campaign on sponsors.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll just make this commitment for a show later in this week. We'll do a revisit of this to see if there's anyone out there already putting something together, and we can direct Scott and Phil and any other listeners, and maybe ourselves, towards that group to see if they can join in and help out. I'm assuming there's a group out there. I just don't know who it is.
Yeah. I mean, I would assume that there's at least some organizations, some global, some local, that are probably trying to get together some organized efforts. Yeah.
Okay, the other thing, what about potentially, say, teams boycotting it? Like, what if the English FA and the US Soccer Federation and the Spanish FA all said, hey, this is deplorable, we are not going to go and play in that stadium? Could the pressure come from the national teams?
It could, but it won't. I mean, it's
because they want to play.
Yeah, they want to play. I mean, at their players don't care. Players don't care where it is. I mean, that's why people go play in the Middle East and China, and to some extent Australia and the United States. It's why there are friendlies in Chechnya. Like, people will go play soccer to play soccer, especially if they're being paid to do so.
Yeah.
The World Cup, especially so. So I think you would never get that because the England players would boycott. They would protest. They would riot. They would still try to find a way, I think, even if the FA said, no, we're not going to participate.
Okay, so our best answer is...
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, our best answer is, like, look for organizations that are helping. We're going to do the same. And then, write a letter or two to the sponsors and let them know that you won't be using their product if they continue to stay silent. Because it's not as though Coca-Cola is going to say, we are not going to sponsor this tournament, or we're going to demand that FIFA move the tournament. But at least you can try to get a company to make – this is such a weird world we live in. You can try to get the company to make the NGO or the nonprofit organization at least publicly deal with the problem.
Yeah.
Because that is the thing. To Scott's first question, like, why is FIFA not talking about it? Why is the world not talking about it? Why would FIFA want to talk about it? It doesn't benefit them at all.
That's interesting. This is the thing I was thinking about is – the current FIFA regime is not the regime that okayed the World Cups in Qatar and Russia, right? Gianni Infantino was not president. There was a very different executive council when the decision to host it in Qatar was made. I always thought maybe there's a chance that the new board coming in, the new regime coming in, would be able to say, all right, we're here now, we're going to switch this around, this is unacceptable. But it seems like they've not done that at all, right? And instead, I think it might just be protecting the reputation of FIFA, because if they started undoing some of the things in the past, it would look bad for FIFA, because then you're admitting that even though it wasn't me, Gianni Infantino, doing this, the organisation of FIFA has done some bad things.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
so that's why they didn't make any changes when they came in.
Yeah, and two things to that. First off, if you then were if FIFA were to take away, that was a weird structure, if FIFA were to try to move it away from Qatar, it's going to be massive lawsuits. It's going to be a lot of, like, I don't know, global court, whatever it would be. I don't know how that happens. Global court. I'm sure Judge Dredd is involved somehow. But, like, you're going to have lawsuits. You're going to have it be a public issue because Qatar is not going to want that PR. So they're going to fight that tooth and nail. That's probably part of it. But the other thing is, like, I don't see – this is – you would say I'm mostly a cheerful person, yes? Like, I'm not – I don't think I'm particularly cynical.
Yeah, why not?
Okay. I do think that large organizations, to assume benevolence is a mistake. And I think that
I assume self-protection.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, like, there's a reason why car companies don't want electric cars to succeed. There's a reason why the oil industry doesn't want that to succeed. Like, they're not working for the best interest of the world. Extend that to FIFA. FIFA, at their core, people want to stay in power. They keep wanting to get those checks. They don't want a lot of oversight.
Except FIFA can say it's for the good of football.
Yeah, exactly.
But to them, the good of football is the good of FIFA.
Oh, you don't want the Middle East to get a World Cup? Oh, so you don't think that?
Right. It's quite easy to make the argument.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens.
The other thing, if you want the World Cup taken away from Qatar, maybe your best chance is not something that we can do, but something that's happening in terms of global politics. Because that embargo, that diplomatic embargo, where Saudi Arabia has cut off Qatar from the rest of the world and is still talking about literally cutting them off by by severing the landmass, right, and creating like a moat around Qatar. That's happening right now. That has not been resolved at all.
Yeah, no, so it has not. And if
I'm not really saying I'm supporting that, because that has really dodgy roots as well. But that's a thing that could end up with Qatar losing the World Cup.
It's possible. Yeah. And I'll say this: people who don't want sports and politics mixing, go ahead and fast forward a couple, like 15 seconds if you want to, a couple 15 seconds. But I'll say this: like, if you have an attorney general who isn't like being tasked with protecting a president and enforcing marijuana laws, but is instead looking into other ways that financial crimes have been committed on U.S. soil, you get somebody aggressively pursuing a nonprofit organization like FIFA that has taken advantage of lax tax laws and corporate fraud. So I think that is part of it too, that think about the way that change actually happens, and it's through agency enforcement and governmental oversight, which is exactly what FIFA doesn't want. They don't want government oversight of anything. So the more that a spotlight is shown upon them, the more that change has to occur.
And to end on a light note, I think if it was to
You can stop fast forwarding now, by the way, people.
If it goes to World Court, presiding will, of course, be Judge Reinhold.
Yeah, of course. Always. Mock court with Jay Reinhold, I believe is what it ends up being.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for today's questions. We certainly covered a lot of ground.
We sure did.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
If you have questions,
I totally saw us talking about Jeff Sessions at some point in this conversation.
We had a lot of questions that we couldn't get to. We had a lot of really good questions for this show, but we couldn't get them all in. We'll be doing this again, obviously, next week and in the future. Please send your questions to totalsoccershow.com/questions.
Do it.
If you're a TSS subscriber at $10 a month or more, which you can become at totalsoccershow.com/join, we guarantee to answer one of your questions per month every month if you're a $10 a month subscriber or more. Final thing, Taylor, before we say goodbye, 2 bits of transfer news.
What you got?
Jeff Cameron is on loan at QPR.
Of course.
I didn't see this coming.
Everyone knew that.
It happened August 31st. I found out this morning, September 4th.
I didn't know that at all. So you told me 10 minutes before we started
recording. It passed me
recording.
by as well. I think he's kind of fallen off the national team radar. I think we're unfortunately less interested, right? But Jeff Cameron will be coached by Steve McLaren at QPR. Yep. Still in the championship. Still in the championship.
Steve McLaren.
Tyler Adams.
That's actually Steve McLaren's official name now. You know that, right? It's Steve, still in the championship, McLaren.
Yes. Tyler Adams, we're all but certain, is joining RB Leipzig in January.
Yep.
There was a rumor reported that 2 players are being signed and that one of them is Tyler Adams. Taylor Twellman himself said, actually I can't remember what he said, but he basically confirmed it.
Yes.
Right? And when Taylor Twellman confirms a transfer, as far as I'm concerned, that is gold.
Yep.
Yeah? That's ironclad.
And then if we were British tabloids, we would say when U.S. Soccer appoints a new head coach on January 1st and Tyler Adams leaves the country on January 1st, would we create a story that's like Tyler Adams can't stand a new U.S. coach, must leave country?
Adams flees Vermees regime.
There we go. Wordplay.
That wasn't any wordplay. I just said it in a very dramatic
Adams
voice.
flees Vermees? Come on.
There we go. Accidental wordplay.
Yeah.
Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me
Don't
today.
even act like that was accidental. Get out of here. You're not that good.
Listeners, thank you for listening. We will be back tomorrow with another Total Soccer show.